Hi, my name's Dan Hawes from Graduate Recruitment Bureau, and welcome back to Student Diaries. In episode 3, we'll be finding out a little bit more about our Sussex University students' lives, so I do hope you learned something useful. Thank you. Sarah, good morning. Lovely to see you again.
Hello.
How have you been in the last 4 weeks?
Good, thank you. How have you been?
Good, very well, thank you. What have you been up to?
I guess what I spent most of my time doing is just getting ready for the holidays. So all of the assignments coming up in our first half of term, it just being a sort of introduction to uni, all of our assignments were bunched up into the last 2 weeks. So it was sort of cracking out essays and lab reports as quickly as possible and as to a good a standard as possible as well.
Right.
And getting ready for working in the holidays to try and get a little bit of money into my bank account before starting next term.
Right.
Sorting out things for fundraising with Mount Kilimanjaro, Christmas parties along the way, just sort of everything non-stop, day and night. So sleep's gone out the window, but the holidays are there to recuperate.
Good, sounds like you need one. Good, so if we take your assignments, have you got them all done and dusted?
Yeah, all done and dusted. I managed to hand them in all between a week and 3 days before the deadline. So
Right.
it
Wow.
gave me time to read through them, check the Turnitin score. So we have a plagiarism sort of scheme to make sure we're not copying other people's work. So it meant I could go through, look at where my sentence structure mimicked other papers a little bit too much, change it, adapt it, and then resubmit it. So it was all plenty of time, nice and chill, all my references done. And it means I had time to go over the content rather than just focus on the very narrow spectrum of the syllabus covered in the assignment, and instead look at the whole area of knowledge and then integrate that into it. So it was more, I feel like it's just a little more holistic to do it that way rather than be like, I have to answer this question, I'll just look at that bit. So
Good, very organised.
Yeah.
1 to 3 days beforehand, that sounds good. And then your fundraising, so for Kilimanjaro, how's that going?
Good. I've got a couple of Christmas parties booked at home. So before I came to uni, I worked in the kitchen.
Okay.
So I'm doing some private catering for that. So that's £200 or so, nice and quickly done in a day. And the big team of us met up last week to discuss our various ideas. So we've got like a jailbreak planned. So we're going to all start at the uni and try and get as far away as possible for free. See if we can cross the sea, maybe get to France.
Wow.
Just blagging it for charity, which should be good fun.
Yeah.
Sexy car wash in summer if we haven't quite reached our mark by then. Trying to get a calendar done as well for New Year, so we'll all dress up, do funny pictures related to the charity, so like all based around water and education and hand hygiene and things like that.
And what's your financial target?
So we have to get £3,000 each.
Wow.
For fundraising for Kilimanjaro, which is a lot, but we've got time to do it, and we've set up our BT Fund Me pages as a team, so we should be able to sort of spread it around if some of us raise a lot more and some of us not so much. So while we are all fundraising for ourselves, there's always that support of knowing you're part of a bigger team, which just makes it that little bit less stressful.
Yes, it would make it less stressful. And being in a team, what role would you say yours has been in this exercise so far?
So far, we have our team leader already around. He is a third year at the moment, and he's been connected to the charity for a while.
Right.
And the rest of us are all first years, so we're all sort of settling into our kind of sub roles. But I would say at the moment it's mostly just been like creativity, just trying to generate as many ideas as possible. So we started off with like 1 or 2 ideas here and there, and then we all met up and it was like bam, 20 ideas.
Brilliant.
Which was really good fun, and it makes, because when you have an idea yourself, it doesn't quite feel fully formed, but as you share it with a group, people can tack on their little bits and bobs and it becomes more real and more achievable. So it's like a little base unit that's been built on by everyone else, which is really nice.
So it's not just climbing up Kilimanjaro, which is a challenge in itself, but it's actually raising £3,000 and finding ways creatively to reach that goal. So yeah, that's a good journey to go on, and fun and interesting, and hopefully will add to your skill set, I'm sure.
Hopefully, yeah. But when I went to South Africa last year for a similar sort of thing, different charity, but again fundraising for it, so you'd improve the charity with your skills and fundraising, and they discouraged working for money, and some of my friends did work and then just put their money into it, and similarly with this charity again, they're trying to say don't just work to bring money in because it doesn't raise awareness. And it's refreshing to see that it isn't just the money that matters, it's having the interactions with people to share your ideas and to share what your passions are, and communicating that across the board of ages, genders, everything, to make sure that everyone's involved in what's socially beneficial.
Sounds good. And moving on to paid work, you've been working on the side as well, haven't you? That's your studies?
Yes, yeah. So just today I had some specialist care because I'm taking on a new care package.
Right.
Which is really lovely. It's in-home care, just helping a family support a loved one. And it's really draining. So I do 12-hour night shifts from 7 till 7, and it's a half-hour drive away to their house. So I have to make sure I have enough energy the day after and day before to do studying at the same time. Yes. But over the holidays it's easier. I won't have all my lectures to worry about.
Okay.
But it's been okay to integrate in, and now that I've got all of my training out of the way, familiarised with the family, it's a lot less stressful. It just seems like part of the timetable now. And over the holidays I'll be increasing the hours to try and make more money for next term, so dropping those back down next term will make it seem a lot less hard work. It'll make it seem a lot easier.
Wow. You talk about having a timetable and organising all these things into that, so learning how to juggle all that, and let alone a night shift, will be quite a feat. So I imagine you're looking forward to a nice break.
Definitely looking forward to that. A bit more flexible and just being able to chill throughout the day and then pick up any hobbies or just chilling out with family and friends. Be a good change.
Sounds good. Anything else that's been going on?
What else? Looking at summer internships at the moment. Right. So I've got in touch with a couple of companies, GSK, and who else was it? Someone in London that does like minor creative consultancy, which should be interesting. Not hugely linked to psychology and neuroscience, but just things that are a little bit interesting and broaden my horizons and what the opportunities there are in the workplace. Psychology is such an adaptable degree that it seems silly to limit it just to doing clinical when I could help people in the workplace, bring my analysis skills into doing things like drug trials. And
what's driving that? Is this the fact that your friends are all looking for internships, so you feel compelled to do it, or have you got a bigger plan? You said looking at a broader range of things that psychology lends itself to. Are you taking a sort of more measured approach to building your skill set like that?
It's just quite interesting. I quite like seeing what's available, what I can do. Over my year out, I did a few odd bits and bobs. So I worked in a GP practice in hospitals, so I've done lots of clinical practice.
Right.
My brother does consultancy in London. I have friends that are in advertising, so I've seen small snippets.
Okay.
And it would be quite nice to see more in detail and where I can fit in and what my skills can apply to, rather than just thinking, I've read that my degree can be applied to this job, I'll aim for that. I'd rather kind of get my foot in the door now and make connections, see who I can talk to, see what kind of businesses I gel with and where I can be most helpful, and then build myself up to be the best that I can be when I reach that stage with the awareness that I'll gain earlier on.
So that does sound a more strategic approach, rather than leaving it to the last minute and then rushing around and then just ending up in any old job. You're kind of seeing that you need to open as many doors as possible, shall we say. So in terms of interviewing and things like that, how have you got on with?
It's been all right. I was lucky with the school I went to. We had interview practice fairly often, so I can do interviews that are labelled as interviews, but it's harder with less obvious conversations. So like a few weeks back, I went to go talk to the head of Interserve, where I work, and I rocked up in my quite grimy trainers that used to be white and are now a lovely shade of beige, and just a comfy jumper and it just wasn't it wasn't appropriate attire for the meeting we were having, and I misjudged that, which meant it didn't go as well as it could have. But I think that just comes with time and understanding that when you meet someone that's quite high up in a company, you dress for that event.
Right.
It's not just meeting your line manager for a quick catch up and seeing how you're doing. You're discussing something to do with the business, and that individual has targets for the business, and you have to fit that. And making sure you fit that includes how you dress, how you talk, how you approach the person. So I think gauging interview, but also more long-term conversations are important.
Yeah, I mean, there's a first time for everything, and certainly in those situations where it's not clear what the dress code is, it can be quite hard for a student to understand the sort of business etiquette and hidden unwritten rules and things like that. So I guess you've now got that experience to help you in the future, so you can dress differently, so you give a good first impression, and I guess it helps the person opposite realise that they need to take you seriously, and that's great that you've had that lesson, I suppose. So that's been really useful. You've got a lot done again in the last 4 weeks, so I think you deserve a break.
Definitely.
And very much look forward to catching up with you again next month.
Definitely. Merry Christmas and see you next year.
Gee, thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Excellent, I'm fine, thank you. Lovely to see you again.
So I have had 2 placement interviews, one at Great Ormond Street and one in Hailsham for the Sussex Partnership NHS Foundation Trust. And I've been invited to an interview for adolescent inpatient next month. So on the placement front, it is very busy and stressful.
Yeah.
I've also been trying to finish assignments and then also starting to think about revision for the exams in January.
So placements, revision and exams and projects.
Yeah. And Christmas.
And Christmas.
Yes.
So it seems relentless, and you're here, you're balancing all of this. I mean, you're learning lots of new skills surely by juggling all these various things and getting things over the line.
Yes. So definitely I had a scenario in my interview yesterday, and the question was, how would you balance several assignments that got similar deadlines?
Yeah.
So I think definitely having a degree or the experience of doing a degree definitely helps with that.
Right.
But then trying to put into words how you manage your time is then another story, because I don't know, I think we just do it.
Yeah, we do a lot of things that only when you pause and reflect you can realise that that's actually a skill that you're learning or developing as you go along. Apart from that, in the last 4 weeks, anything else that you've learnt that's new or you developed a little bit further?
In terms of personal things, I have been doing more of tutoring.
Okay.
So I now officially can say I've got my own business for tutoring.
Right, congratulations.
So that is exciting. And I've now got lots of pupils. So also then balancing them in the sense that they're younger, so they haven't developed time management skills and kind of turning up promptly and doing things like that. Or they're very, very inquisitive, and it's lovely to see.
Okay, you haven't mentioned this before, an entrepreneurial streak we're seeing here at all. How did all this come about?
I started it after GCSEs.
Okay.
And I just kept doing it, and now I am happy to say it's a job, because I used to think it wasn't a proper job because it's sort of self-employed, and would you consider babysitting to be a job? But since doing my first year, I've decided that actually you don't have to fit into a box. You don't have to do the traditional bar waiting or working in a shop or doing something. You can literally, if I like working with children, I like teaching maths, so I've decided that I'm happy to call that a job.
Sounds good. So how do you recruit new pupils?
So I have word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So particularly with GCSEs and confidence, I have a website, and also originally there was a online website which is kind of like a Facebook but for pupils and teachers.
Yeah.
And that was kind of where I got my first pupils, and it just kind of expanded.
How do you think an employer would view that experience?
Well, when I mentioned it yesterday in my interview, they were very impressed. And, you know, because I've done it since I was 16 or 15, I hadn't really considered it to be a skill because, you know, it's just something that's part of me, part of my life. But I think actually thinking about it, it means I've been managing money, I've been managing time, managing other people. I've realised that I have to do so much research because, honestly, the primary school syllabus, I don't think I could go through primary school again because it is so hard. Do you know how many different types of nouns there are? I have learnt so much. And then teaching my little 8 and 9-year-olds, and it's things that I just didn't learn at school.
Right.
Because the syllabus is continuously changing. So much. And then with the new GCSEs, and then the new A-levels, and then also how the exams are now focusing more on exam technique, or actually, like, maths is now completely wordy. So instead of having 3x plus 2x equals something, you're now, John went to the pub, John went to the supermarket and bought 3 apples. He then got on a train at 12:45 and got off 50 minutes later. What was the time? So it's so wordy, and for children whose maths, they can't automatically see that words and maths relate. So it is so kind of loads of different skills you have to kind of find to teach people and then to help them understand.
So that sounds a very different approach when you were at school, and certainly when I was at school.
Yes.
And then, you know, these boys and girls are going to be graduates of the future down the line, some of them maybe.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. You're involved in that area as well, helping this next generation of students and graduates hopefully into the workplace. I mean, what else do you think from your experience these youngsters could benefit from?
So in terms of what else would help them in the future?
Yeah, make them more rounded individuals.
Definitely, from my experience, focusing on, so because I'm also a health and wellbeing volunteer,
Right.
And we recently had a developmental lecture on bullying, and Ofsted doesn't look at the emotional, or they literally only look at the academic side.
Yeah.
And although that is important, surely we should be bringing up the next generation to be also, like, to understand that you need to have empathy, you need to not hit people, you need to kind of listen and do time management, and the whole world isn't about exams.
Right. Which brings us nicely to your exams.
Yes.
Which you said are at the end of this month?
Next January, yeah.
January, sorry. So you've got quite a bit of time to revise. How have you planned all that out with everything else that's going on?
So I, at the moment, are still trying to focus on my last assignment, which is due on the 26th of December.
Okay.
And then that gives me approximately 3 weeks to then revise. So it is going over lecture notes, splitting up the time, remembering that essential readings are also examined. So things like, they seem to be quite obscure studies, but they are linked. So kind of knowing what Howarth et al. Did in 1984 and what implication that had. So it's definitely a lot of content. And then, because I'm now in second year, so last year everything was multiple choice questions.
Okay.
So that was quite nice and quite kind of a nice start to the degree process. Now half the questions are multiple choice.
Right.
We've now got some short answer questions, and then we've got some essay questions as well. So this is the first time that all of us will have done an essay question in an exam setting. So we had a lecture on it, and I think quite a few people started to panic because it's kind of like, well, actually we're spending months writing an essay, and now you want us to write it in 2 hours.
Right.
So
you feel stretched, you and your colleagues, you feel this course is challenging you now?
Definitely, yes. I think quite a few people want it to just go back to multiple choice, but Dave, who is the developmental module convener, he was saying about how we deliberately have different questions to challenge different areas. So multiple choice is sort of about giving you the information and giving you like the scaffolding, and you've just got to pick the right one. The short answer questions are kind of, they give you one prompt, which is what the question is.
Right.
And then the essay is kind of then seeing your breadth. So it's kind of like breadth and depth, and then both.
And for those that do struggle, you mentioned a chap called Dave, who's a developmental
Module convener.
module convener. Is he the go-to person if you're struggling?
With developmental psych, yeah, he is amazing. So we have student support, we have academic advisors, we have module conveners who are the people who are kind of the head of each module. So if you were struggling and you feel comfortable talking to an academic person about it, you can go to Dave or one of the other module conveners. So we've got 4 modules, so there's 4 module conveners.
Wow.
So if I'm struggling with something, I just go to one of them, because I've had the time where I'm not happy to put my hand up in class.
Yeah.
I have now decided that actually it's more important to understand than be worried about what other people think.
Wow, that's great to have that backup and support.
Yeah.
Have they been there since day one?
They have definitely, but I think as a kind of a new fresher, you're kind of like, well, I don't really want to draw attention to myself.
Right.
But I think it's really important, because as Richard, who is the, he's the director of student experience, so if you've got a pastoral and academic issue, or you've missed some uni like I did, you kind of go to him. He was saying to all of us that actually if we need a reference, tutors are going to want to know who we are. And if we've never been to them, if we've never said a single word, how are they supposed to write a reference about us?
That's very interesting, because obviously in a lot of CVs, students and graduates, one of the first and easiest references are a departmental tutor or someone like Dave, who, like you say, needs to know you.
Yeah.
So it's worth building those relationships with them.
Definitely.
Interesting. Good. Okay, it's been lovely to catch up with you, Tor, and find out everything that's been going on that's in your life right now. Hopefully you'll have the opportunity for a bit of a break.
Yes.
Yep.
And Christmas.
Absolutely. So have a lovely Christmas and see you in the new year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, good morning. How are you?
Morning. Well, thank you. Yourself?
Good, I'm fine, thank you. Lovely to see you again. We're very keen to find out what you've been up to in the last 4 weeks.
Yes, I've been very busy as usual.
Yeah.
Lots of things in the run up to Christmas. The usual essays and dissertation hand-ins, but I've had some nice things to do as well. So I've had an event that we ran for our badminton team.
Right.
Which was really nice. So as I'm the president, I sort of ran point on it, which was a lot harder work than I anticipated. I've never really ran an event before, but it was a tournament for the team with 35 people.
Wow.
So it took a little bit of organising, getting the prizes and making sure it ran smoothly. But it just about went to plan, so that was quite nice. And it was a nice little tick in the box, a sort of a skill that if I need to run an event again, I know I've at least got a little bit of experience. So
good.
That was quite good. I've also been to a few different talks they put on in the university. So they love to have guest speakers here, which I knew about, but I'd never been to before. But my tutor for one of my modules this year was speaking at one of the events, so I went to her her talk to start with, and then I sort of started to look at the other ones that the university put on, and I found they were really interesting, and they added quite nicely to my courses. It gave me something like a bit extra to talk about in my essays. So I've been to 4 now. They've all been on different things, mostly on like sort of current campaigns, the Black Lives Matter campaign, and then the decolonising universities, trying to make university knowledge a bit more inclusive. So some things I've never even considered before, but that's something I find really interesting. So hopefully I can go to a couple more next term and keep adding to my knowledge.
Sounds good. And you heard about that from your tutor?
Yes, yeah. So I took a couple of modules this term that I didn't really know anything about. I usually try and play it safe and stick to sort of similar topics that overlap nicely. But I took a completely random topic this term because I thought, why not? It's my last term. And I think I had a little bit of a light bulb moment, which was really nice. I think you have this sort of, everyone goes to university and they think they're going to come out with this like whole field of knowledge, and I didn't really feel that. I thought like I'd learned a lot, but I was sort of just coasting through and just adding to the foundation of knowledge I had. But I kind of feel like I've got this new like fresh wind of knowledge and experience that I didn't think I'd ever sort of be interested in. So that's been really nice.
That's good.
Yeah.
So they have guest speakers. Would there be an opportunity for a student to speak?
Yeah, I think so. They're usually in sort of a classroom environment. It's not like in a lecture theatre where they're sort of dictating at you. It's actually quite a nice, friendly environment where they'll tell you about the book they've written or their field of knowledge that they're specialised in, and then they sort of open it up and everybody sort of talks about things and shares experiences, and I think it's a really nice environment. And you'd learn like a lot of crazy experiences that people have had and like thoughts they've had that you would never even cross your mind. So
that's really good.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
it's
been really
different
good.
to having your nose in a book or in front of a laptop. Kind of brings it to life a bit more, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's really helped as well for me, like talking to different people from different backgrounds. I think because my course is full of people with quite similar backgrounds, so talking to some people that are perhaps an international student or they're doing a master's and they're actually living here with the whole family and they've got completely different university experiences. It's been really interesting, and hopefully those kind of like conversations where you have to really adapt like how you speak to people will be useful in later life.
Absolutely. Communication skills with a broad range of different people in the workplace is really going to help your career progress, definitely. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Thanks to your tutor, you've now discovered that new avenue.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's interesting, the sort of your relationship with your tutors or developmental managers and things like that over the time you've been at university. What else have they done to help you make the most of your time here and steer you through your course?
I think you definitely have good relationships with some, and then others sort of just brush past you and they don't affect you. But I think I've been really lucky especially this term. I've had tutors that actually really care. So for instance, you can go to the office hours and talk about your essays, but they'll also like help you with anything else that you need to know. So I finally, after all my millions of grad jobs I applied to, I've got a couple of interviews.
Oh, okay.
So I was actually talking to one of my tutors about it because it's sort of her field of knowledge from that kind of background, and she'd wrote research papers in that area.
Wow, that's
and she
useful.
was really pleased, and she was sort of giving me a few pointers. So it's really nice that you can have that kind of relationship with them. I'm sure all tutors are like that, but just some are a little bit more enthusiastic than others. So it's been really positive.
Yeah, I mean, they're really helpful, and particularly if someone's in the field that you want to go into, they can tell you so much more and give you, a head start. And I remember last time we spoke, you were conscious of not missing deadlines for these jobs. So you've got a job offer and...
Not an offer, but I feel like I've finally got one stage past the competency test, which is really nice. So yeah, exactly. I was juggling my time and I was kind of feeling a little deflated because I'd put in so much time into all these applications and not necessarily getting the results I wanted. So since we last spoke, I've had 2 different... interviews, so one's for an assessment centre and one's for an interview.
Okay.
I actually had 3, but the third one was quite far away, and it wasn't feasible to get there, which I was really disappointed for because it was sort of the one I really wanted. it was quite far away, and it was like on a Tuesday at 9 a.m. and there was no physical way of getting there other than sort of taking the train before and having to stay over, and it would have been quite expensive.
Which they wouldn't have covered.
No, and they didn't cover, which I found quite, I don't know, especially if they want an inclusive sort of group of people, they're sort of cutting out half of their... I imagine a lot of students would be in the same situation as me, that they either couldn't afford it or they couldn't physically get there on the train lines and so on. So that was a little disappointed, but I was glad that wasn't my only offer, because I think I would have been really, really disappointed in that case. I understand if it's sort of London, which is quite central, but this was like really far from Brighton.
Sure.
So yeah, that was a little bit...
That's a shame. I mean, this happens a lot. Some companies pay expenses, others don't. I mean, what in this situation, what would your advice be to that employer?
I think at least, especially because it was in Wales, so it was far from here and far from a lot of places, I would at least hope they could cover part of the expenses, or if that's like not feasible, then perhaps they could do it later in the day, because at 9 a.m. From Brighton or even from London, you'd struggle to get there at that time in the morning. So maybe they could be a little bit more accommodating, which I did question them, sort of said, oh please, would you be able to make it a little bit later, or explain the circumstance, and it was sort of a straight no. So you'd hope they'd be a little bit more accommodating, flexible.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. It seems a shame just to sort of financial or very sort of logistical things got in the way of what was your first choice. Exactly,
especially because I'd spent so long. I imagine a lot of people be in the same position. They spent such a long time applying and they were really enthusiastic for it, and then it was just such a silly reason why you can't even go to the interview.
Recruitment in general can be very inefficient. And unfortunately, that's a case in point. But on the bright side, you've got
I still got two
other
really
companies
nice,
who they're interested in you and you're interested in them, which is great. Anything else? You're going to start looking?
Yeah, I've still got a couple that I've applied to. I've not heard back from yet.
Right.
Which is okay. So I'm hoping in the new year they'll get back to me. And I think when it comes to January, so mid-January, most people have got it's like the midterm assessments are done. So my essays will have been handed in, so I'll have a few more weeks of time. So I think I'll then go back to the drawing board, see where I am with jobs, and then perhaps apply to a few more.
Right.
I might start looking away from graduate schemes now, just purely because they're so time-consuming. So I might look at more local jobs, although I know they don't necessarily look for people so early in the year because it is January and I don't graduate till June.
Yes, I mean, for a lot of the schemes there are set deadlines, which you're obviously aware of, but there are lots that have rolling intakes, and some don't have any deadline at all. And there are also companies who take on graduates that are outside of schemes as well, which are often overlooked. So you've done the right thing, you've gone for those jobs, but so will thousands of other graduates. So it's always good to look at those jobs that are under the radar as part of your plan.
Yeah, I think as well, I've not particularly focused on location in terms of graduate schemes. I've just sort of applied broadly, but obviously, like, I'd love to stay in Brighton because home is so far away. It's not really like I could commute. Sheffield is a good 5 hours in the train, so ideally if I can find a job that allows me to stay here, then that would be nice. So I think I'm going to switch my attention more across the location now, and see if there's something that catches my interest here.
Sure.
I mean,
nice. Obviously the cost of living's a lot here, but there's a lot of pluses for being down here.
And I find like here's home now, so if I can stay, then that would be really nice.
Cool, good. Yeah. So balancing a lot of things by the sounds of it, and looking forward to a nice break, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going home on Friday, so very
Lovely.
Excited.
All right, have a lovely time with your family and friends, and see you next month.
Yes.
Thanks, Ella.
Thanks.
Well, I hope you found that interesting to see how our students' journeys are unfolding at university. Tune in next month and find out even more. Thank you.